from 10, Britain decides. LBC Election 2019. This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation. Cross Question with Iain Dale.
Well, the time for talking is certainly not over on this programme yet. It's Cross Question, LBC's weekly political panel debate show. Your chance to ask our panel any question you like, 0345 6060 973. You can watch us on the LBC website at lbc.co.uk, the YouTube channel, Facebook page or Twitter. With me in the studio for the next hour taking your questions, Paul Mason, journalist, filmmaker and author, Claire Fox, Brexit Party MEP, founder and director of the Institute of Ideas think tank, Alastair Campbell, editor-at-large of the New European People's Vote campaigner and former director of communications to Tony Blair, and Sarah Vine, the Daily Mail columnist, is here with us too. So let's get going.
Call 0345 6060 973. Tweet at LBC. Text 84850. Cross Question with Iain Dale on LBC.
Well, welcome to you all. Let's get our first caller on the line. Andrew is in Reading. Andrew, what would you like to ask?
Nothing.
Andrew, are you there? You've let me down, Andrew. Well, I'm going to ask the question that he's... Actually, no, we're not. We're going to go to Richard, who's a new caller in Leeds. Hope you're there, Richard.
Hello.
Thank goodness.
So my question is, given that mental health services are very stretched and stressed, how do the panel think each party should support mental health services across the UK?
Well, Alastair Campbell, you've been a long-term campaigner on this subject. What do you make of the various parties' offerings?
Well, it's been non-existent within the debate. And one of the most dispiriting things about this whole election debate has been the extent to which I think it's almost, somebody once said politics is showbiz for ugly people, and I'm afraid that's how it's been covered. It's just not been about things that really, really matter to people. Johnson's got his slogan, get Brexit done. Jeremy Corbyn's sort of been saying that we can deliver everything that people want, just with a bit of tax on the rich. Joe Swinson hasn't really kind of broken through, and I've never known an election with so little real debate of substance. So, I mean, in answer to the question, there's an awful lot that I would like to see done on mental health. And you and I have talked about this before, and it's not just about money either. It's actually about the kind of attitude that we take towards issues like this. But I just think it's been incredibly dispiriting that it just hasn't even figured on the radar.
I just think you can't separate mental health from physical health, because the two are the same. It's like saying, I think we should have free dentistry on the NHS, because it's absurd that you treat the rest of the body but you ignore people's teeth. But I mean, I think that Alice is right. This whole election has been really, it's just been so sort of one-dimensional in the sense that we haven't really delved into any of these issues at any extent.
Why do you think that is?
Well, I think because the shadow of Brexit is still really hanging over this election, and there is a feeling that until that's resolved, no one can really move forward.
But it hasn't really been just a Brexit election, has it? Labour have been quite successful in talking about the health service, but it's been about threats to privatise it, sell it off to the Americans, rather than sort of how it should be structured in the future.
To be honest, no one in their right mind would buy the NHS, because it's it doesn't make any money and never will do, and it shouldn't do. So it's but I completely, it's just Alastair is right. It has not been a traditional election campaign in the sense that these issues have not been properly debated.
Paul Mason.
Well, we have to fund the NHS to the level that clinicians ask us to fund it. I think there is an emerging consensus about that. And if you look at one of the places I've campaigned was in Plymouth, the city, with 2 constituencies. And there's 25% of the Plymouth population currently are covered by emergency GPs. Now, what does that mean? It means if you're presenting with a mental health issue, you're seeing someone who's never been there. It's a private company. We're paying over the odds for it. And then what happens? People with mental health issues turn up at A&E. So A&E's in crisis. And then...
or they turn up at the police.
That's right. That's what, the next thing is that the police spend so much of their time dealing with that if we began to spend money on mental health, and fair play to you, Alastair, for your dedication to this issue, I think we would solve so many other things. I too lament the fact that we've not been talking about the deep details. And sometimes when you see an MP on the doorstep who's actually engrossed in some really, basic but very worthy and good thing, you think, if only we could get back to talking about politics like this.
Sorry.
Well, I think that one of the problems is that the discussion about the NHS has become quite toxic. So any attempt to dig deeper other than funding means that you can't have a conversation. I mean, if you start to say, what would the money go for? People start saying you want people to die on trolleys. I mean, you can't get to a situation where you say there's something wrong with the way health services are being run in this country. Mental health is one of the issues that you would want to talk about. I mean, to say what the Brexit Party's policies are actually things like, for example, removing the necessity for nurses to get degrees, which is very popular when we've talked to people, which is to increase the number of nurses, or 24-hour GP services, which actually, when we were talking about that with actually voters in town hall meetings, those kind of things, one of the things for that was mental health came up quite a lot. A lot of the veterans that have kind of been around the campaign have made the point that mental health is a major issue for veterans. And so I think that one of the sad bits about the campaign is that you can't dig deeper because you'll be accused of, in an ironic way, closing down debate instead of actually having a richer conversation. This election is the Brexit election, but if we want to do politics differently, we have to stop name-calling, in my view, and be serious about issues about how we have a health service that's not fit for service.
I think the other thing
not fit for purpose.
I think the other thing is that the way that the debate is carried out on social media means that all arguments are shrunk to their sort of lowest, to their basic, their most basic components. So it's actually quite hard to have the kind of serious, long conversations that you need to have about mental health. I mean, I did a series on mental health about antidepressants, and I went and visited GPs, and one of the problems was that they were seeing people because of the sort of weird way that GPs now work. They don't see the same patients all the time. So they see patients they've never before seen. So they tend to prescribe antidepressants because they're worried. They don't know this person. They don't know whether they're going to go away and harm themselves. And mental health is so important. And so, most homeless people you see on the street have mental health issues. That's why they're there, because they can't cope, and they've ended up, in this situation. So it is a really, really important issue.
Can I just make a point here? Because if with the media, and we're sitting here surrounded by all these TV screens, and here we go, radio studio and what have you, the media will never, to my mind, and it's not a criticism, it's just what the media is. It's not the responsibility of the media to decide the tone and nature of the debate. The politicians decide that. So if you have a leader of the Conservative Party who literally has one goal in this campaign, that is to utter 3 words, get Brexit done, and then
better
avoid...
than strong and stable, though, isn't
Well, it might be, but, but he, if you have that sense of that every single question goes to that, why did he get caught out with that photograph of the young boy in the hospital? Because he couldn't bring himself to look at it.
But Corbyn has done the same. Corbyn has done the same. He has reduced the argument. No, but I'm just saying that this is the point. Is it's an ever decreasing circle, isn't it? Because nobody can break free and actually have a sensible debate.
I'm not Jeremy Corbyn's biggest fan, as you know, but. To be fair, I think the Labour Party have tried to at least generate some sort of debate about the future of the country. I don't believe Johnson has. He's got
this actually goes into our next question. So, Richard, just have a little comeback on that, if you like, what you've heard.
I think I work as a clinical psychologist, and one of the things that I've seen over the time I've worked in that role is that the last major change in mental health was done under a Labour government. It was the provision of something called IAPT, which is improved access to psychological therapies. And since that time, the actual funding and structure of mental health services has really not been developed, improved or addressed. And it's actually taken steps backwards because there are absence of beds, and the environment that we create for people.
Well, Richard, that is a really important point, because in 1987 there were over 60,000 mental health beds in this country. There are now 18,000, and that's been a progressive decline right through those years. It wasn't just in Tory governments; it happened in the Brown years too. But that needs to be reversed, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. But what I'm looking at is the access to psychological therapies. What was introduced was an intervention where individuals could self-refer to mental health services directly without seeing their GPs, which actually increased people in work. Those sorts of roles are going. and the services are cut and really demand.
Okay.
As social pressures increase on people, they wait longer to access therapy, and therefore their work, their difficulties become more entrenched. So I think that, yes, you can see absences in beds over a long period of time, but actually the access to therapy itself is...
Okay, well, that's an important message, Richard. Thank you very much. Andrew in Reading, I hope we've got you back, because you have a good question related to what we were just talking about.
Sure.
Yep,
so,
go ahead.
How does the panel suggest that people who have lost total faith in Parliament, total faith in the lies of parliamentarians, how do they suggest that people like that turn out and vote? Because, as you said before the news, when you were talking to someone from the Green Party, you know, most people who want to vote for a different party, you said it's a wasted vote. Well, how can my vote in a democracy be a waste? We need proportional representation where everyone in this country...
Well, you're answering your own question now. Let's let the panel answer the question. I'll come back to you. Paul Mason.
Look, one of the pollsters, the polls are telling us that one of the likely outcomes, one possible outcome of tomorrow is a hung parliament. Now, paradoxically, although constitutional change has not really been on the agenda, apart from Scottish independence of this election. One of the weirdest outcomes might be that if we did get a hung parliament, since the Lib Dems, Labour, Scots Nats and etc. can't agree on much, one thing they might agree on would be constitutional change. I am a supporter of PR, and I think that...
Most Labour MPs aren't, are they?
Well... yes, but
might be tomorrow.
There might be tomorrow. You never know. There might be by Friday. But no, look to the question to Andrew. I think that it is a tragedy that so many votes will be effectively wasted tomorrow. I want to see. One thing is you can bring politics down to base level. Whatever you think about Extinction Rebellion, and I have criticisms of it. One thing you can say to it about them is that they have said, right, okay, we're going to be almost a kind of mute anger against politics. We're going to do stuff until politics reacts, rather than bothering with getting involved in it. If that's what you think, and I don't think it, but if that's what you think, that's a way to do it, that you get involved at grassroots level and you start to change things.
Claire Fox.
So I think one of the most interesting things about the referendum in 2016 was that people actually thought, actually this vote might matter. You know, and people were told, I was at many meetings at which there were speakers who were arguing for Remain who said, your vote this time, for the first time ever probably in your lifetime, will make a difference. And I think that people took that very seriously. That's why they voted in the huge numbers that they did. And having done that, I think it's been dispiriting is the understatement of the year, that they did that, and then everyone said, you voted the wrong way. And I think it's had a really dramatic impact on people's belief in democracy, that what's the point? I did vote. I voted to change things. I got ignored, and so on and so forth. I think that Paul's absolutely right about proportional representation, or, at least at the moment we can say that Parliament is not going to represent what people want. And when you talk to people, they'll say, I'm going to vote for the least worst option. Many people are going to vote for the Conservative Party because they think it'll get Brexit done. I'm talking about leavers, obviously, or those people who support the referendum result. But they are holding their nose. They haven't gone Conservative. And then there are other people who are saying, I mean, The Guardian today is arguing that people should vote for Jeremy Corbyn, never mind about the Jews, as it says. Well, it says terrible about the Jews, but it's still Progressive Party. So it's not exactly a ringing endorsement. You then got Labour Party people saying vote Lib Dem tactically. Basically, that is not an inspiring thought. And even if you don't like the Brexit Party, any party, it could be Change UK or the Brexit Party, trying to break through as a new party into Parliament can't do it with the present system. So you have got people saying...
standing down in the middle of an election, will you?
No.
Really? I mean, why do you want to break through? Why don't you stand against all the candidates like most parties do?
But because, in view of the fact you're arguing that people should vote for the Lib Dems on a tactical basis, it was a tactic, that thing. And it was an attempt at stopping a Remain Parliament. But I actually do think it disenfranchised people. And that's terrible. Disenfranchising people shouldn't happen. And with first past the post, many people are disenfranchised regardless. I, of course, want people to vote, but when people say to me, I'm going to, I've got one young lad and I'm drawing a box, I'm going to write clean break Brexit in it, like it never been thought of before. But what he was trying to say was, and somebody said, that'll spoil your ballot. He said, I'm not going to spoil it, I'm going to draw a proper box. Because he was the first time voter and he had a sense of wanting to make his mark. And that was in a place where we'd stood down. So, that was, as it were, my responsibility to answer that. But the broader point is that sense of the one time you had a vote that really mattered in a referendum. Since then, everybody's told you that you voted the wrong way, it's going to be overturned, and we haven't implemented it yet. And that will disillusion people in the democratic process.
Disillusion can come in many places. I think a lot of disillusion comes from the fact that the referendum campaign, with Boris Johnson at its helm, was... we don't need to relitigate the whole thing, but let's not pretend that he didn't tell a pack of lies on a systematic industrial basis, and he's now telling a different set of lies. And I think trust gets worn by the fact that politicians campaign and win, and then, yes, you're right that Brexit hasn't been delivered, but in part it hasn't been delivered because they've been found out on the lies that they told then. And added to which, crimes committed, and then media and politicians couldn't give a damn.
But Alastair,
that breeds mistrust as well.
You know that people listening to you saying that will be saying, Iain, you've got to challenge him on the war in Iraq because they think that you and your government told lies over that.
Want. Yeah, but why do you feel you have to do that because you're a journalist?
I do, because there'll be loads of people that are shouting at the radio at the moment.
They won't be shouting. You want them to shout.
I know my audience.
You might do, and some of them might, right? And I can point you, we can relitigate that one as well.
I don't really want to.
No, exactly, but you raised it. 6 inquiries,
it's not just on
cleared
one side, is it?
No, well, actually, I think it is on one side. I think this is the first time this country, if Johnson gets a landslide, for the first time we are knowingly electing, as the Americans did with Trump, somebody who lies on an industrial basis. And I think that is a really terrifying thought. I think this is, Johnson is somebody, I've known him a long time, as others in the room, and he is somebody motivated. I think the caller earlier said that, because most politicians lie. Most politicians actually don't lie. Most politicians try and tell the truth most of the time, but they're dealing with difficult challenges, and sometimes they have to say things they don't fully believe because of collective responsibility, etc. Johnson lies. He lies a lot. He cannot help himself a lot of the time. And I think if we knowingly elect as a country him to be our Prime Minister at this time, I think that is a really dark and dangerous moment in our history. I happen to know you agree as well, because it's what you used to say to me.
Did I now?
I think the idea that proportional representation is going to be the solution to all our problems is mistaken. I mean, I grew up in Italy, which has proportional representation, and they have not managed to have
become more exotic by the minute.
Single successful government since about 1945, because it's always got to be a coalition, and that creates its own problems.
I can quite use Germany. I mean, as we see as a successful country, that has a form of PR as well.
But I don't think proportional representation will necessarily solve this problem. The problem is, as Claire says, that people feel very betrayed. They had a referendum.
People feel betrayed that it hasn't happened, and people feel betrayed that the government has cocked it up so badly over the last 3 years.
Well, the problem is
they want it. The country doesn't want it anymore.
The country voted for one thing, and Parliament wants another thing, and that is the fundamental issue, which is that you have an elected assembly that disagrees with a democratic vote that the country voted for, clearly, in 2016, and so you can never square that circle. I don't think having proportional representation will make that any easier or any better to resolve. What has to happen is that the politicians have to find a way through with a sensible compromise that will deliver the closest we can possibly get to an honourable result, and that's what they have to keep working at.
And I think I just wanted to add, because I think it's right to say PR isn't just to fix it, although I do think that Parliament is no longer representing the possibility of the wide range of politics that could be emerging, because I think the two-party system is broken. I think that its traditional bases of the two parties are collapsed. Everyone's voting in very odd ways, and I'd like to see different parties break through. And I'm not saying that because I'm in one of the new ones. But
you're right. We should have more.
But what I was going to say was that I was in, I think we're not to mention constituency, but I was in a constituency at a hustings listening to a former MP of that place, looking at the people and saying, I know what you voted in this area, but I know that if we let this go through, Brexit, it's going to have a dire consequence on this area. And and that's why I'm arguing for a second referendum to stop it happening. I just like looking at people. They then start jeering. She says, don't boo me. I thought, yes, they're furious with you because you're saying... Alastair thinks that everyone's changed they hadn't changed their mind. They were her voters.
I don't say the
irony was
a lot of people have.
The irony was that they were her voters that she was saying it to, who were completely tearing their hair out, and that experience is replicated.
I just think
and it has been replicated in front of the sofa, shouting at the telly, and now it's been replicated in these elections.
It works both ways. Dominic Raab, who I hope will lose his seat, he's
generous to a T.
No, well, I really do. But I mean, he's facing
why should
problems
Dominic Raab lose his seat though?
Because he's
because you don't like him.
No, I really do hope that tactical voting takes off. And
I think tactical voting is a shocking idea.
Well,
I think it's
I would
shocking
love it. I would love it in a healthy democracy.
But the point
we'd
is,
all just vote for who we believed in.
What you're asking the voters to do is to sort of, adopt the same sort of kind of tactics, sort of underhand tactics of Parliament. It's just wrong.
No. Sarah,
I
felt the same.
For what they believe in.
A message you might pass on. I felt the same as the Tory party has said, will you lot stand down? You're ruining our chances.
Yes, exactly.
And you think, go get your own votes.
Right, Paul,
can you stop this, right? Leave me alone.
It's just because I don't think us shouting at each other will necessarily convince anybody.
No, but it's entertaining.
We weren't even shouting in that instance.
What I think is that tactical voting tomorrow, if it happens, will not be about Brexit. What has already happened is that the pro-Brexit vote has consolidated around the Conservatives. Your Brexit party is self-destructed down to single figures. And when voters see that, I don't think many Lib Dem voters went into, or Scots Nats voters went into the election thinking, I must vote for Labour. But when people see one side of the debate effectively taking advantage of the two-party system to game it, that people are now saying, I want to game it as well. But my experience is that they're not primarily bothered about Brexit because they know that one of the outcomes of electing Corbyn will be to get a new Brexit deal. What they're worried about is the level of insouciance about the rule of law, the level of lying, the level of, to be honest, third-party Conservative campaigns playing very fast and loose with spending here, the lies, the fake news.
What about momentum?
Yeah,
momentum is actually a constituted...
Were they fined by the Electoral Commission after
last time?
election?
Yeah, about a couple of £100 for an administrator barrier. But what we're seeing here is of a different order.
It is.
When yesterday it was said that the photograph of the young boy in Leeds was fake, and it was traced back to where this came from. The fake story about him, which I believe you pushed out.
I did. I was going to talk about it. So
we might come on to that.
Where that came from, though, was from an organised effort to amplify it, which at least two of the origins were far right people on Facebook. 6 Conservative Ps retweeted it. A famous journalist believes even now it's true. And I think that's our side of politics. I can live with Brexit, but I can't live with the society.
You used to support it, didn't you?
Well, I think this is a question about social media as well.
No, it's about the Conservative Party allowing and ventilating, and in many circumstances, I suspect, paying for this.
Can we at least all be slightly more humble about our own sides, by the way? First of all, I would just like to say that I made a mistake. I was so furious and infuriated because I'd seen this thing about where somebody had said that a SPAD had been hit and they hadn't. And I was thinking, well, were they hit or weren't they hit? And then I saw this thing that said, that the child hadn't been lying on the floor. And I said, oh my, if this is true, I'm giving up. That's what I said. And it is true that I retweeted the tweet underneath. And I have subsequently said, I shouldn't have done that. I was furious and angry, but at the general state of things, if you want. But I was irresponsible. I was irresponsible to do it, and I know that because I actually don't want disinformation. But when I say about being humbled, and I'm happy to put my hands up on any of these things, because this cut and paste style of activism is frequent. I mean, Paul, the truth is, there's cut and paste WhatsApp groups that presumably are cutting and pasting what they should say to me, because they're all saying exactly the same words to me, attacking me over that particular story. And then that's happened throughout. You know, when I went to elected in the European Parliament, I couldn't really understand what was going on, because I had this new email, and I got the same email from like 5,000 people all at once, all of whom said, I'm from the Northwest, I voted Labour, you are a far-right disgrace to the nation. But they are like exactly the same wording. Now, I just genuinely don't understand it. I'm like thinking, what happened there? So I think that every party probably does it. I have urged and stressed and said that anything I'm involved in shouldn't do that. And to their credit, nobody's had to see my speech or tell me what to say or ever dared. But I mean, I don't want anyone to do it. That's the point I'm making. Speak from what you think.
When the BBC fact-checking thing, the 88% of Conservative Party ads going out on Facebook, some form of misleading, judged to be misleading in some way.
0% of Labour.
0% Labour.
No.
I'm sorry.
No, I know.
That is just
I don't
ridiculous.
know what happened to that
I mean, it
fact-checking.
undermines the BBC fact-checking.
Well, maybe
it
does, but I honestly think that when people always want to say in politics, 6 of one, half a dozen the other. I do think there is a difference now. There's a material difference in having Johnson at the helm of a party. And what you see when this happens is that you then, I mean, one of the worst, most horrific car crash interviews of this campaign.
Been quite a few.
There have been a few, but Nicky Morgan on Good Morning Britain, when she was trying to pretend that it was true that there were going to be 50,000 new nurses when there aren't. And when you have somebody who is capable of lying at the top, you then have to have all your cabinet lying, and you have to have all your candidates lying.
Isn't that where we have to be quite careful about using the word lie? Because I agree with you that the 50,000 figure is preposterous.
It's a lie.
However, their justification for it, there is an element of truth to it. It's not the same as a politician looking into a camera and saying that there are 376 days in the year. That is we all know that's a lie.
Well, it is a lie when he says, when the guy in the hospital visit says to him, you're just here for a photo opportunity, and he says there aren't any media here, and the cameras are right next to him. I mean, the guy cannot tell the truth. This is a different level.
I'm worried that now we're going to get caught up on saying everyone's a liar, and that actually doesn't. No, but
I think it's exceptional.
I don't think it's holding him to account politically.
I think we all have to assume that voters are actually more intelligent than a lot of people think they are, and if they see politicians manipulating statistics, you call it a lie, you can call it manipulation, whatever, they make their own judgments about that. Don't you think?
I mean, I remember.
Do,
I mean, Plaid Cymru are saying that there should be a law that any politician that lies should be put in jail, or it should be a criminal offence, which is preposterous.
No, but I do think that something has shifted, and I think that, you've seen what's happened with Trump getting elected in America, and the stuff that we thought was never going to happen, it's happened. And I can see with Johnson getting elected, look, I've known him for a long time, I can see with him getting elected in his own right, with his own mandate, that for me is a political, cultural shift that I think we're really.
The thing is, the question is, I mean, I remember. Do you remember in the 90s there was a fantastic Guardian advert which had two blokes running along, one bloke walking along a street and then a skinhead chasing him, and then you thought the skinhead was going to mug the guy, and then you looked up and he was pushing him out of the way because a piano was falling on his head, and that nothing has changed. It's all about perception, and it's all about what angles you approach things from. And the problem with modern politics is that because of the internet and because of social media, these skills have become even more accentuated. And so the question you have to ask yourself is, so Alastair says that Boris Johnson gets his numbers wrong, or, obfuscates, or is, whatever about these things. He says lie, I say not. But, I'm just as worried about an anti-Semite, Jeremy Corbyn, being in number 10. I mean, it's a question, what would you prefer? Somebody who overestimates the number of nurses, or someone who thinks, Israel shouldn't exist?
Right, we have to go to
Jeremy Corbyn is not an anti-Semite.
Well, we'll come on to that in just a second. We have to go to the news headlines in a second, but just this text. Ian, really disappointed to see you have a really biased panel. It shows that LBC is a pro-Remain London-based station, despite your views. Well, if I tell you that we have two Remainers against two Brexiteers.
And a member of the Brexit Party.
We have a member of the Brexit Party. We have a Labour support. I think I can, without insulting you, Paul, I can say Labour supporter. We have a Conservative supporting journalist. And we have Alastair Campbell, who is quite difficult to
just
categorise
rises
at the
above
moment.
all of those
You're
things.
campaigning for the Liberal Democrats where you live, but you're not endorsing them nationally.
No, not where I live. Where I live, I'm voting Labour.
Okay, all right.
Alistair transcends politics. You should know
He's just a bit mixed up at the moment, isn't he?
I know exactly what I'm doing.
Right, more from our panel. Sarah Vine, Alastair Campbell, Claire Fox and Paul Mason in just a moment. Keep your calls coming, 0345 6060 973. It's 8:32 news headlines. Serena Farrow.
Boris Johnson's warning about the risk of a hung parliament in tomorrow's election and says the race could not be tighter. Elsewhere, Jeremy Corbyn insists he can offer hope after years of austerity, while the Lib Dems think they'll benefit from tactical voting. A teenager's been found guilty of the gang murder of a 14-year-old boy in East London. Jayden Moody was knocked off a moped while dealing drugs back in January, then was stabbed repeatedly. And the author, broadcaster and environmental campaigner David Bellamy has died. He was 86. The Conservation Foundation, an environmental group which he co-founded, says he inspired a whole generation. LBC weather, cold and frosty night with showers confined to parts of Scotland and northwest England. Feeling cold with a low of 1 degree.
Election 2019. Continuous coverage on LBC. Sheila Fogarty, Monday to Friday from 1 p.m.
What I'm saying to you, as somebody you've just told me you've withdrawn from politics, is don't withdraw. Don't.
Disengaged. But it's very polarised at the moment. I feel actually guilty that my vote will be used against me. So I just find it very disengaging.
Don't disengage. Get stuck in. Use your vote and then use your voice in the direction you want to see the country go in.
With Blink, an Amazon company, helping give your family peace of mind.
LBC.
Looking for your perfect kitchen? Visit roomsense.co.uk.
Quality at a price you can afford. That's Room Sense. Urine leakage, urine leak.
Tenna Men. Pants and pads. Buy online or in shops. Tenna Men. Keep control.
Did you know that bacteria from gum disease may cause Alzheimer's? The GAIN clinical study is testing an investigational drug that may halt the progression of Alzheimer's by reducing damage caused by bacteria that travel to the brain. St Pancras Clinical Research is seeking volunteers aged 55 to 80 with Alzheimer's to participate in the GAIN study. To find out more, please contact St Pancras Clinical Research at stpancrasclinicalresearch.com. That's stpancrasclinicalresearch.com.
Cross Question with Iain Dale on LBC.
8:35. Someone says, why are the ladies so well behaved and polite and the men mostly angry and rude? Is that
'Twas ever thus.
Who's been rude? I don't think any of us have been rude. A little angry at times. That's what kind of a debate is all about, isn't it?
It's rare that I've been called a lady, I'll take it.
0345 6060 973. You're listening to Cross Question with Sarah Vine, Alastair Campbell, Claire Fox and Paul Mason. We have a call from Jerusalem. Ellie is in Jerusalem. What's your question, Ellie?
Hi, it's a question for the whole panel. If Friday morning comes around and Jeremy Corbyn somehow gets his hands on the keys to number 10, what would you say to all the Jews in England who are feeling very perturbed and worried about a Jeremy Corbyn Labour government running the country with its anti-Semitic history?
Okay, Paul Mason.
It doesn't have an anti-Semitic history, that's what I'd say. And I'd refer you to a letter I've got in front of me from 130 prominent Jewish people supporting Jeremy and supporting Labour. The Jewish community in Britain is certainly split. It has big debates about politics, about the politics of Britain and even the politics of Israel. And Labour's mistake, which I think we should admit, has been to get wrapped up in that, to not be sensitive to it, and to fail to deal with real cases of anti-Semitism. But that's not the same as being an anti-Semitic party. We're very proud of our role in fighting fascism right the way through to the 1930s, through to today, and Corbyn has been there on the front line of doing it. So whatever your criticisms of Corbyn are, and you may make them on the administrative dealing with anti-Semitism, which I would also make criticisms and have done. That's not the same as being a party that is racist.
But do you accept that there are many Jewish people who are considering their future in this country if Jeremy Corbyn becomes Prime Minister?
I absolutely do, because 1/4 of my family is Jewish. At school, I suffered mild, I have to be at Catholic school, mild anti-Semitism. I think that many of us on the left failed to realise what the new anti-Semitism looked like. I think we were looking for something old, we saw something new, some of which has infected even our party. But I would say that I would try and I was campaigning in Prestwich, Manchester, where my family live, big Jewish community there. Some of them support us, some very definitely don't. What our job is to do is to reassure them, because we know above all that there are elderly people in that community who keep a bag packed in case it happens again, in case the Shoah happens again. They are right to be wary of Western society's potential to melt down again in that way.
Do you accept, though, that there has always been a strand of anti-Semitism on the hard left?
Well, look, I'd say Stalinism, the Soviet Union, tried to cover up the specific Jewish aspect of the Holocaust. The Jewish journalists in the Red Army who went into the camps at the end of the war wrote a book on it, the so-called Black Book. It was suppressed because they said, look, we all suffered. So yes, absolutely. We on the left must always fight against that terrible legacy of authoritarian leftism, which did collude with anti-Semitism. So I've got no problem with saying that. I've actually spent my political life trying to do that, but obviously not successfully enough.
But when somebody like Sarah calls Jeremy Corbyn an anti-Semite, and many people have done that, why doesn't he sue them for libel?
I don't know. You'd have to ask him. I mean, look, we have the libel laws here are ones that people like me as a journalist, I think, and Jeremy's an NUJ member, we try and avoid using, because it's better to have freedom of speech, surely.
Sarah Vine.
I would say that I think that I think that you should trust in those parliamentarians who are supporters of Israel and supporters of the Jewish community to put brakes on any of your concerns. I don't think that Britain is fundamentally an anti-Semitic country, and I don't think Jewish people living here really should worry that much. But I do have a lot of Jewish friends, and they are extremely anxious, and I understand that, because it's not a very long time ago that very bad things happened to their community. So it's totally understandable. I think Jeremy Corbyn, I think the Labour Party, their main problem, there was no question of anti-Semitism when the Labour Party was a much more centrist party with Alastair Campbell and people like that there.
Well,
I think, as you said,
Ian,
I think it's
then
to do
bring
with
up
this
that pigs
move to the
poster
left
that was put out in the 2005 election.
I know that. I was involved in that, and I was genuinely shocked by the reaction to that. I think that the anti-Semitism problem for Labour. It's interesting. I did an interview with John Bercow recently for GQ.
I've read it.
Well, and he was quite interesting because he's Jewish. I'm not Jewish.
Is it out yet? Have I read
it?
Yeah,
it's out. Yeah. And no, it's not out. It was online. But he said he's never sensed any anti-Semitism from any member of the Labour Party inside Parliament, including Jeremy Corbyn. I think what did happen is that some of the people, the most passionate supporters of Jeremy Corbyn, who do conflate these issues of the Jewish faith in Israel and Palestine. And I think that has become a problem. And I think there's a capacity and competence problem that the Labour Party has not addressed it in the way that it should have been done. And I think it's one of those things that, I think the chief rabbi coming out as he did, that was one of the moments of the election, there's no doubt about that. And I thought that was, to me, what happens when you don't grip a problem during the Parliament.
But there's no doubt that Jeremy Corbyn has been seen to support people who are enemies of Israel. I mean, very, very clearly.
Does being an enemy of Israel mean that you're anti-Semitic?
Well, I think I think for many of the Jewish community, it does, because they consider Israel to be their. By
the definition of anti-Semitism, I would not say that was necessarily.
Well, that's a question, very good question. But I think if you're, I'm not Jewish, and I don't know.
Okay, Claire Fox.
Right. So first of all, anti-Semitism exists on the left and right in politics. Important to note that, of course, and it's the oldest form of hatred, a form of bigotry that we wouldn't be anticipating to see the rise of, but we are. I think that, Paul, you're wrong. I think that you underestimate the problem, though, because you said we've had administrative problems in dealing with it. And I just don't think it's administrative. I think it's been an underestimation of the scale and depth of the rise of anti-Semitism on the left. I mean the left now, not just the Labour Party. About 4 years ago, I started organising events on the rise of anti-Semitism on the left. I mean, not like public, trying to talk about it and just get people together. And people immediately said, "Oh, you've become a right-wing pro-Zionist bitch," variations thereof. And I was like, no, I'm worried about the rise of anti-Semitism on the left. And I think one of the things that we get is you've got a form of politics, if you think about it, a kind of crass conspiratorial thinking in general, combined with a pretty sort of crude version of anti-capitalism, which takes the form of I hate bankers and rich people. Some of these things become tropes and people don't even know it. This is combined with, I think, a real inability or refusal to confront some of the most egregious aspects of anti-Semitism that can emerge in Asian communities, where I have been there and you have been there, Paul, and we've all been there on those marches where people will say terrible anti-Semitic things and the left kind of turn a blind eye. I've been in sixth formers and classrooms where kids have said, I wrote a book using this, 9/11 was a Jewish conspiracy, all of these things. And people sort of say, and then when I say that's rubbish, and then the teacher's saying, oh, you're very brave. And I'm thinking, it's not that brave, is it? I'm just trying to say. And so what I think is there's an anxiety around these issues that's basically meant that we've turned a blind eye to it. I think that, I do think that Corbyn should have squashed. I think he could have gone round and squashed it really early on, and he didn't. And I don't know why he didn't, because it's not that I think he's anti-Semitic, but he didn't do it. And saying it's an administrative problem, it's got out of hand. Now, if you try and argue against it, then you get people. So I was on the stall in Islington today with an anti-racist Brexit Party member on the one hand, anti-racist ex-Labour Corbynista until about a year ago, or disillusioned because of Brexit, and with a Jewish candidate standing in the Islington North and South things, right? And people were just coming up and saying, and they had fight anti-Semitism on one hand, fight anti-Muslim prejudice on the other, fight racism. That was one of the things they wanted to say on their Brexit stall, their Brexit Party stall. We had some interesting conversations, and then people were coming up and saying, "How dare you come here and say that the Labour Party is anti-Semitic," which nobody had said, is anti-Semitic, and you come here and what are you doing? And basically, the Jewish candidate's like getting blasted out of the round, and you're not caring about ordinary people and real racism and all the rest of it. Real racism. These are the sort of things that you hear. Well, and I think we've got to be honest on all sides. I don't want to just point fingers, but the left, which I'm part of, has got a problem of anti-Semitism, which it has not confronted, not handled, and therefore the Labour Party has been tarnished with that now, and it's got to take responsibility for it.
But I also think one of the problems is that the left, the Labour Party has always been associated with being anti-racist. When I was younger, I always thought that if anyone was going to be racist in political terms, it would be more likely to be the Conservatives. So I think that the problem goes even deeper there, because it's such a reversal of what we think the Labour Party
Boris
to be.
Johnson's comments about European migrants are close to beyond the pale.
They were.
Saying they come here, effectively, they use our services.
Treat it like their own country.
Yeah, treat it like their own country.
They've lived here and worked here for years.
But I think we can all be...
Your leader stood in front of that ridiculous poster, Britain is full. I mean, look, I don't want to get into he said, she said, because our caller,
You
Ellie,
just have done.
No, but because our caller, Ellie, was saying to us, what are you going to do to reassure us? And I will say everything we can. Absolutely everything we can.
Ellie, quick response from you.
I just find it a little bit strange how Alastair lambasted Boris for that. But when it comes to Jeremy Corbyn, who has admitted that Hamas and Hezbollah, who have called for not just the killing of all Zionist Jews, but for all Jews, his friends, he couldn't think of a little bit of criticism, maybe.
No, I've made very trenchant criticisms of Labour's handling of the issue and some of those views in the past. But I think that, my partner Fiona, she left the party over it before I got kicked out of the party for rather more rapidly than some of the anti-Semites were kicked out of the party. Indeed, some have not been kicked out at all. But I do think, we are now 24 hours away from an election, and I do think now that there comes a point where, yes, Jeremy Corbyn is absolutely flawed in many, many ways, but I really, really worry about the future of this country if Boris Johnson gets what looks like he might get, which is a big majority. I really, really worry about that, and that's, I think for me, I actually don't. What I say to you right now is I don't think you have anything to worry about, because I don't think there's going to be a Labour majority.
We'll get your predictions on the result in just a moment. Ellie, thank you very much for your call. We'll take a quick break and back to your calls in just a second with our panel, Sarah Vine, Alastair Campbell, Claire Fox and Paul Mason. It's 8:47.
James O'Brien, Monday to Friday from 10 a.m.
Let's go back to fast food. Teachers punishing children for going into junk food joints. So, is it a job for the teachers? Ed is in Huddersfield. Ed, what would you like to say?
Well, surely it's a parental responsibility.
Parents aren't there, are they?
No, but neither are teachers.
Well, except they are. He's in a high visibility vest and he's been photographed in every national newspaper, which is why we're talking about something that is happening.
Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
Business like a boss with a new mobile plan from 3. All the usual stuff you could get from a phone contract, like unlimited data, plus 6 months of exclusive benefits from our partners. Spend less time accounting and more time businessing with FreshBooks. Build a website designed to work perfectly on a mobile with Wix. Get a receptionist that's not your nan at WeWork. And nothing says, I've got this, like a business card from Moo. Get the mobile plan that actually helps your business, because 3 means business. Search 3.co.uk/business for further details.
Marooned in deep space and no sign of help? Don't panic. And with the AA, the app lets you track the mechanic right to your side. I'm thinking of joining the AA. I don't think they accept cats as members. Who said anything about being a member? I want one of those shiny yellow jackets. Ow!
There are lots of smart reasons to join the AA. You'll get unlimited call-outs, our tap and track app, and we'll get you going again in around 30 minutes of arrival. Switch to a different kind of breakdown service from just £5 a month. Visit theaa.com. New customers only. T's and C's apply.
Close your eyes. You're enjoying a Mediterranean lunch with sea views. Feel the vibes. Open your eyes. That's Castillon. Close your eyes again. You're on the beach with your friends. The sea caressing your feet. Feel the freedom. Open your eyes. That's Castillon. Pack your bags and let's go. Now with direct flights from London Stansted and Luton to Castillon Airport, you've no excuse. Seize the moment. Memories to live for. Castillon, Spain. Turismodecastillon.com.
All this music will. This is the massive return of The Who with their incredible new album, Who. Their first studio album in over 13 years. Who, the new album from The Who, out now.
Cross Question with Iain Dale on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
It's 8:49. Welcome back to Cross Question. Let's go to our next caller, and it is John. Is a new caller in Nottingham. Hello, John.
Hello there.
Hi. What would you like to ask?
Yeah, what I wanted to ask was, what would be the future of the NHS under the Conservatives in the event of a Conservative government, and how would Brexit affect the NHS long term if it was to be implemented?
Okay, Sarah Vine.
Well, I don't know. I don't really speak for the Conservatives on this, but I would say that I know Alastair will disagree with me, but if we leave the European Union, we'll be able to spend more money on our NHS.
How do you work that out?
The figure on the side of the bus, which Alastair is about to raise, I know I can see it just by looking at his face.
Such a mind reader.
was the gross figure. Not the net figure, but that money would be able to go back into the NHS. I don't think there's any question. I know that the big narrative of this election, one of the big narratives, has been the NHS is for sale, the NHS is for sale. The NHS is absolutely not for sale. I don't think anyone ever said it was for sale. And in any case, as I said before, I don't think anyone in their right mind will want to buy it.
There are £10 billion worth of private sector contracts in the NHS at the moment, so
yes,
there is private sector involvement.
We've had those under... I mean,
no, but it is at the highest level ever.
Yes, but the thing about the NHS is that it has to... The NHS has to meet the demand, and the demand on the NHS is increasing hugely. And if we have a Labour government who have stated an open door policy on immigration, we're going to have even more demand on the NHS. So we have to find sensible and pragmatic ways of making it work. And whether you do that through taxation or whether you do that through other means, I don't think there's any question anywhere that the NHS is going to be anything other than free at the point of delivery as it currently is, and that's what it should be.
Do we need to come to you, Alastair, because we've already kind of heard your answer from Sarah?
Yeah, no, that was absolutely brilliant interpretation of my views. Not. I think there's two things I would say about Brexit. I mean, I talked about how dispiriting this campaign has been. Johnson's got his slogan, get Brexit done, even though all that's going to happen is he gets his withdrawal agreement and then we're into the really tricky bits. Yeah. There's no assessment that anybody has done, including the government, that says that our economy is going to benefit hugely from this. There's no trade deal that's going to fill the gap. So I think we are going to see a slowdown of the economy. And the second thing I'd say is that our health service is already being impacted by Brexit with the departure of so many European Union doctors and nurses who've had enough and who think they're not welcome. And I think that it's a myth that we're going to be able to deliver the people that we need to work in the health service from, as it were, our own, whatever that means these days, but without the support of people coming from overseas.
But we're not saying that no one is going to come from overseas. I mean, you're making it sound as though literally nobody from abroad will ever come to Britain again.
No, I'm not saying that at all. I'm not saying that at all. Although
there will be negotiated immigration. We'll presumably have quotas, and we'll have the people that we want or need.
I think that's a lot easier said than done.
Right, and given that we've only got 7 minutes left, I'd like you two to answer this quite quickly, and then we can squeeze in one more question. Paul Mason.
I think, look, it's not about selling the NHS literally. The fact is that there is a trade deal coming up with Trump's America that Johnson.
He said he doesn't want to do.
Johnson wants to prioritise, and in 11 meetings, what was said was that the NHS has to be on the table. That means that American healthcare companies need to be able to come and bid for large parts of our NHS. That is what the Tories already want, because they're pro privatisation, as are you, Sarah. The point is that they want to open it to the Americans, and it would be very easy to say tomorrow, today, tonight on LBC, Johnson rings in, look guys, it's an absolute red line, the NHS will not be allowed into those talks. But he can't say it.
He has said it.
He has said it. Everybody
said
it.
It's the opposite of what's happening.
No, but Trump has said it too, hasn't he?
And it's the opposite of what he said before, because he was told to say it at the NATO summit.
That is true, because he didn't understand what the
they're both liars here.
Right,
Can I just correct
Claire.
I'm not pro-privatisation.
Yeah. We started off talking about disinformation and talk about a crass version of politics when it's the NHS is for sale to Trump, which I've heard endlessly. So everybody says, no, it's not. And then you go, yes, it is. And it's hopeless, right? So what do I think is going to happen to the NHS under the Tories? I fear not a lot interesting. I actually want there to be a big shake-up. That's what I would like to see happen. Shake-up, I mean, we haven't resolved the problem of social care. We haven't hardly talked about it. We talked about mental health.
Labour's the only party spending on it.
The Daily Mail is the only newspaper campaigning for it.
Let me have I'm trying to do it quick. It's not just about money. It's very important that we actually are honest about what we need to do. I think it should be free at the point of delivery. I think that outsourcing so much of the NHS has been hopeless and useless. Managerialism set in. So I do think there's a lot that can be changed. I think that people who just shout privatisation versus misses the point, because I actually think it should be more brought into public ownership, but not satisfactorily run, or not run in the unsatisfactory way. Just on the staff, that's really important. I agree that it's tragic that people think that they have to leave the country because they're not welcome. I disagree with...
Why would they be thinking that? Why would they possibly be thinking that, Claire?
Because they were...
And your leader stood in front of a lorry saying, go home,
Paul,
effectively.
Stop being so disingenuous and doing your leader. Absolutely disgraceful.
Well, he is your leader.
No, listen, he stood in front of a poster 3 years ago. I don't follow a leader like that. This is just an attempt at slurring me. We've just talked about anti-Semitism in the Labour Party.
I'm not slurring you. He's your leader.
He is one of the reasons people feel unwelcome.
I think one of the reasons why people are not feeling welcome is because so many people on the Remain side said that Brexit was a racist vote and meant that everybody who voted Leave were anti-Europeans. I have been told that the Brexit vote represented xenophobia and not wishing...
Not by me.
Okay.
I don't know why you're looking at me, because I've never said it. I don't believe
I'm not looking... I'm just trying to finish a sentence.
It's not all about you, Alastair.
Let me finish the sentence.
Go on, then.
Consequently, many Europeans wrongly feel that Brexit was about being anti-European, and it wasn't. It was about sovereignty.
Right.
And also, there's nothing wrong with saying that those people who live here can be trained up to work in the health service, and that's not a British jobs for British workers slogan, because it's people who live here from all around the world.
We must move on to get the final question in.
I know, this is infuriating.
John, thank you very much indeed. Let's go to Chris in Richmond. Chris, quick question, please.
Michael Gove's talked about the policy of freedom of movement being extreme and dangerous. Why would anyone like me or any EU national want to vote Conservative?
That wasn't your question that you said you were going to ask.
I don't understand.
Ask the question that you said you were going to ask. Just do us the politeness of doing that, will you?
Okay, sure. I mean, do the people on the panel believe that we should have an MP for people living in the European Union, given there's almost 2 million British expats?
Good question.
Well, 3 of my family are British
Sarah,
expats. So both my parents live in Italy, and my brother lives in Spain. And yes, I think they do need. I mean, my parents have been going through a very complicated system. I mean, it's very difficult for people who are expats.
Because other countries do have representatives, don't they?
But they do, and there is help when they have.
I'm trying to think of an argument against it, but I'm not sure I can. Can anyone else think of one against it?
Well, I think it's a bloody big constituency, and the expenses might become a bit of an issue if it's the rest of the world. I've got a friend in France.
Great. That could tempt me back into politics.
I was going to say, I'm standing.
Most of the European countries are being very reasonable towards British expats abroad, and we have said that we will
wait till the negotiations.
No, because yes, but what do you mean wait until the negotiations
They haven't started.
I mean,
but we can make a collective decision, can't we?
Yes.
That basically, as Brexit is going to happen in some form, that we can ensure that collectively, rather than impugning and traducing each other, that we actually all get together and say, this is not an anti-European moment, and therefore we can be welcoming.
People need to understand the difference between the EU and Europe. They are not the same thing.
A member of Parliament for expats.
I prefer to make sure that expats don't get penalised after 15 years abroad. So that's one of their problems.
Very arbitrary limit.
It is. But the other thing is, I mean, I'm actually in favour of national sovereign parliaments, and I think the parliament has to represent that which it is nationally sovereign over. Like, for example, includes Gibraltar, the rest of it. Now, the thing is, there is a bigger problem, with due respect to our caller. The bigger problem is that something like 2.7 million British working people don't have a vote. And that is the East European and European migrants who've come here. For the bosses,
but there's no other country in Europe, as I understand it, that gives the vote to people who aren't citizens.
Well,
apart from Britain and Ireland.
Scotland did in its referendum. It was really interesting.
My parents can't vote in Italy and never have been able to.
But citizenship is important, Paul, isn't it?
No, I believe
citizenship is important.
But they are citizens of the European Union. That's the point.
No, but we are leaving that.
No, we're not at the moment. And while we're in it, I think they should have the vote.
Okay, right. Final text question from Beth in Newcastle. You're going to like this one. Would the panellists turn to the person sitting to their left and tell us what they'd get them for Christmas?
Oh, for God's sake. I'm hopeless at these sorts of things.
Sarah, what would you get Paul?
Paul Mason. I don't know. He's rather handsome. Maybe a nice scarf.
Yeah.
Scarves are so boring. God, poor Michael.
Well, I don't really know him. I can't get him anything else.
Alastair.
I would get Sarah the history of political lying. Very good book.
Is it by you, Alastair?
No, it's not by me. And I'd give it to your husband in the hope that he might have some influence upon Mr. BJ.
Well, there we go. Claire.
I've already given Alastair his present. If you held that
Reclaiming
up.
democracy.
Reclaiming democracy.
Oh, you have, yeah.
Yes. Left-wing arguments for sovereignty. So, edited by myself and Henrik, making the point that actually the arguments for national sovereignty and for self-determination come from the left originally. And you might learn something by reading it,
I'm
Alastair.
sure it will sit beside my bed.
And it was paid for by EU money. First thing I went in when I got there was found the fund.
Nigel won't be happy with that.
Paul Mason, you can choose me or Claire.
Well, I was going to say Claire because I think I'm going to buy you one of these walking books. Walks through the Belgian countryside, because I've got a hunch you might be stuck there for a long time.
Well, thank you very much. I think it's been an excellent debate. Thank you very much.
Antwerp, it's very nice.
Oh, predictions. Yes, we forgot predictions.
Yeah.
Let's do that.
Well, first of all, I think that the Tories will win, not by something. It's hard to know whether the Brexit Party will get anyone over the line. I think that actually, whatever happens, the Tories will win, and then they will both vote through the withdrawal agreement, which I think is inadequate and hopeless. Okay. And then I will be leaving at the end of January. So the good news is I'll get the sack then.
Alastair?
Even if the negotiations drag on.
I fear that the liar and charlatan is going to get a majority unless...
Of how much?
I think it could be quite sizable unless the tactical voting thing really, really takes off, and I really hope it does, because the last thing he deserves is a majority of any
Sarah?
size.
It's just unknowable.
Oh, come on, that's not very
Well,
interesting.
it is unknowable.
So you don't have any confidence that there will be a majority?
It's unknowable.
Paul?
I'll give it a prediction that's a range. Either a slightly hung parliament, with the Tories being the largest party, or a smallish majority for them. And I'll tell you why. Because we have never seen a people-powered campaign on the day of hundreds of activists going into seats like you're going to see tomorrow. I don't know what to expect from it. Either nothing or something quite dramatic.
And there's 20% undecided, by the way, in many places.
Yeah.
Can you imagine that high?
That is an interesting point, because all parties know the get-out-the-vote operation is absolutely crucial, and I think that's where Labour could actually score.
The weather forecast is horrible.
I'm never sure what the weather effect is on turnout, but
there's three. I've been to every region, and there's 3 drops in quite a lot of them on the BBC weather forecast.
We're very, very late. We have to leave the programme now, unfortunately, because we could go on for another hour. Sarah Vine, Alastair Campbell, Claire Fox, Paul Mason, thank you very much indeed for joining us. We'll be starting to talk. We're going to continue our discussion on the election in just a moment. 0345 6060 973. What are you hoping for tomorrow? What are you fearing tomorrow? You're listening to LBC. It's 9:03.
On your radio, on Global Player, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom, party leaders are making a final push for votes in what they're describing as the most important election in a generation. Jeremy Corbyn's urging people to back real change under Labour, while